There we go. All right. Again, my name is Sharon Bradley, Special Collections Librarian. I am part of the team that teaches the one on legal research, but I'm also responsible for our rare book room. Did you know we have a rare book room? We do. If you'd like to see it, let me know. I'm happy to show it to you.
What kind of books are there?
Rare.
Oh.
Rare. None with human skin. We don't have any of those.
Oh.
Although we do have some kind of icky ones. Some icky stuff. But some are very old, 1400s, 1500s. Most of them in Latin or law French or things that we can't read, but so we do have that. We have an archives, I'm also responsible for that. And the portrait collection, all the portraits on the walls, I take care of those. And so a lot of interesting stuff. But today I'm actually going to talk about some databases that are particularly useful for the job search process. And I'm sure, I know you have to meet with someone in the career development office, and they will tell you it's sort of never too early to start. And the job search process, it is a project, it's a long-term project. And you kind of need to treat it like that, as you would say a long-term legal issue or a long-term research project that you're involved in. So some of the databases that we can recommend are very helpful for that process. And I tend to call this presentation Lead Me to a Job because one of the databases we'll look at is called the Leadership Connect. So it's just more a play on words than anything else. I can help you with resources and databases. Obviously the job part, the CDO are your primary connection there, but again, it's part of your process in doing all of this kind of stuff. So, never too early to start. So, for these short presentations, I kind of generally follow a rule of 3. So we're going to look at 3 databases, and you probably haven't looked at any of them, certainly not in your research classes. And then I do also add on something, so 3 plus something else as well. If you have any questions about any of them, make a note. You're welcome to email me along the way. We don't have a lot of time for questions, so if you do, just kind of let me know sort of off stage. So I do want to call your attention to a page that we've created that has career development resources for you. There's the URL up at the top there, LibGuides. That's a service that we use for research guides. It's a great system, very flexible. And what we're talking about today, see right here, it's got the date. And these are the 3 databases that we're actually going to talk about. So I put the links there for you just to make it a little more convenient for you to find these things after the fact. And, but I also want to call your attention to our career and professional resources collection. We're going to talk about databases today, but we still purchase a lot of print materials. They're published all the time, constantly. And they're a great resource for writing cover letters, sample resumes, interview tips and tricks and things like that. And again, CDO is going to help you with a lot of that information. But sometimes it's just nice to have a book to kind of sit down. And if you're thinking about constructing your resume, you all still do the resume review for them, right? To help them.
It's part of the writing process.
Right.
So the resumes they got.
Right. And so, but there's a lot of samples in here of cover letters, or maybe they want something else. So, or just what the practice of law is like. Just a lot of interesting things. Matter of fact, the one I picked up the other day called The Relevant Lawyer. Reimagining the future of the legal profession. So some interesting articles there. But we recommend looking at those kind of things again as part of your background preparation for going out into the world and preparing to interview. Because knowing about the industry, or if you want to go into a corporate world, what that industry might be like, it's important to gather that background information as well. So here's this page for you to look at. We also have a broader list of subscription databases. We're just going to look at 3 that we subscribe to. But I do want to remind you, because hopefully you've been exposed to our list of subscription databases as part of your research classes, but just to remind you where we keep all of those, you go back to the library's webpage, and way over here on the right at the bottom, it says Research Resources. And you end up at this page. And I do want to also tell you that one of the ways to sort of make sure that we don't take too much time in these lunchtime presentations is I'm not actually going to log into any of the databases we're going to look at. You know, sometimes that just goes horribly awry to do that. So I'm not going to subject you to that kind of thing of my trying to type words into a database. But I do have screenshots, so you'll know what they should look like, making sure you get to the right place. But this is our list of the databases that we subscribe to. It automatically goes to this alphabetical list when you use that URL up there at the top. But you notice there are some other tabs there as well. We have one for Georgia resources specifically. There's a tab that says reference databases where we've organized things more by topic, like there's a page just for federal, foreign and international materials, one just for the databases that cover U.S. government. But this is our comprehensive alphabetical list. So, the 3 databases we're going to look at. One is, and I kind of already mentioned this about looking at the market itself. And the first database that we're going to look at does an excellent job of looking at the legal field, the market, what's going on out there. But this is something you're going to have to make an effort to sort of figure out what's going on. If you're going to interview someone, what kind of interesting cases they might have been involved with. So there's a lot that you can do to get background information in the field itself, and then specifically when you get that interview, looking at a particular firm as well. So lots of reasons to do those kinds of things. And the interview is as much about you learning about the law firm as them learning about you. And you want to appear that, one, you've done your homework, but you also want to appear engaged in the practice of law, engaged in the kind of work that law firm does as well. So you want to be prepared to ask them as relevant and as pointed questions as they are going to ask you. Some of the samples might be, I read about a recent case that your law firm handled. At what point in my career might I expect to work on those kind of cases? Or if you're going to go to an agency or a government agency, whether state or federal kind of agency, you know, you've read about recent budget cuts and changes in the funding streams, and so you want to ask questions about hiring plans for that agency as well. You might ask a question, I read about a recent merger between your firm and the Smith & Jones firm. You know, how has that changed the firm growth? How has that changed the firm's legal focus or the culture? So you want to be absolutely, as I say, engaged in that interview and asking them questions, not just like how much overtime am I going to have to do, or do I get holidays, or you know, that kind of thing. You want to ask questions that make them know that you've, one, done your background research, and that you are interested in their firm. Now what you might find out is that you're actually not. You know, sometimes this background information that you gather on a firm, you might find out that you don't really kind of like the kind of work they do. And that's important too. It's important to know what you don't want to do as well as what you do want to do. Or if the firm maybe is involved in the kind of cases that you don't find enriching to your life. That's just as important as well. And you also, if they're in the news, you might want to avoid bringing up any kind of bad news as well. So you need to know if there's something going on, maybe should bring up as well. So one of the resources is ALM Intelligence Legal Compass. This is the name of the database itself. ALM is American Legal Media, kind of actually a big name in the legal news field. They publish American Lawyer and the National Law Journal, which we still get in print and online. And they also publish something called Legal Tech News, which we only get online, I believe. So a lot of publications with current awareness information. And that's another suggestion I have for you, is finding a publication that gives you current awareness information. It might be a blog, it might be a publication like American Lawyer, but find something that you like to read, you like the things that they cover or the way that items are written, so that you are keeping aware of things in that field. It might just be law in general, but let's say you want to go into environmental work. Finding a blog that covers environmental issues is important as well, so that you're already thinking about things in that field. And I'll point out a couple of things that we have that might point you in the right direction. So for ALM though, what did I want to say there? Oh, you can also, with this particular tool, set up alerts within this tool. And so get a weekly or even a monthly summary of some news as well. So, the Legal Compass, as they're calling it now, their real strength is their surveys. They do lots and lots of surveys. And they also do law firm profiles. So those are their two strengths, are the firm profiles and the surveys of sort of the field in general. Now, they do tend to focus on larger law firms. So, but you still want to check it out, depending upon who you're going to interview with as well, whether they have the information about that firm. And a lot of competitive intelligence on those firms, meaning, you know, the number of lawyers that are there, average salaries, the ratio of partners to associates. You know, you might find if you have one of those firms where they're really top heavy on partners and they got 2 associates sort of doing all the work kind of thing. So sometimes those ratios can be very important. Who they represent, if they represent corporate clients or even government agencies or even famous people, that kind of information will be part of their competitive intelligence and could be important for you to know as well. One of the strengths of the service is being able to focus just by location. So maybe you have your heart set on working in a particular place and you're open to the kinds of work that you might do there. So this is a tool that you can use to kind of narrow things down to a particular location as well. So a couple of different ways that you can perform your searches in there. And let me go on to that. This is what it looks like, and it's probably hard for you to tell there. Up there in the corner is, it does say University of Georgia, so it indicates that it's part, part of our subscription. But the kinds of things that they'll have here are recruiting and competitive analysis, client prospecting, benchmarking. But here's where we have things like surveys, rankings, and reports. Again, their real strength are these surveys. Things like salary surveys. What are the average salaries out there? What are the salaries in, you know, those top 500 firms as well? Law firm search and lawyer search. So let's say you met someone at an event here at the law school. You can kind of check them out through the lawyer search, particularly if they're coming from some of the bigger firms as well. I like this one here where it talks about office trends. Those are things like, oh, are law firms moving to smaller space, less square footage per person? So they really get very detailed on a lot of these surveys that they have. So what is the average office size? So do you have an 8x8 cubicle or that sort of thing? So really, you could find yourself going down the rabbit hole in this one because it really is a lot of interesting information that you could be looking at and comparing different firms as well. That same kind of thing where you can really get lost in all of that. So you do have to, again, kind of be careful, but there is just so much information for you to look at here And I'm not going to say kind of which is best. I think that's up to you and the kind of work you want to do and the kind of firm that you want to work for as well. But again, this is a good place to start to get that nice broad view of the industry and particularly the law firms themselves. ALM also tends to focus on real estate and finance fields as well. So there's some other tools that we don't subscribe to that cover those industries. Oh, and if you get to this screen here and you start rolling over some of the little icons, they'll give you a little description of what it covers, and they'll use the phrase KPI, the initials KPI. Anybody know what KPI means? I did not.
Is it key performance indicator?
You got it! Give him a cookie. That's exactly what it is, key performance indicators. So, which is a pretty generic term in many ways, but I had to look it up. So they do tell you what each of those little bits cover as well. So just, I mean, fascinating stuff, I think. So as I mentioned, the law firm profiles, one of their big strengths, you know, when you've set up an interview, obviously one of the places you probably start is with the law firm's website. But that's all very rosy and pretty and all that kind of stuff. You really do need to go a little deeper so that you know what you're getting into. And that's where the ALM comes in. So they'll give you news on that law firm, good and bad, you know, cases won, cases not won, or controversies, or if, you know, if the partners are squabbling and they're splitting and things like that, which happens pretty frequently in the legal world. And then the compensation data, what are the average salaries there? And associate satisfaction rankings, which to me seems really important. The compensation, maybe you are not working for a firm that maybe is that large, but it's still important for you to know kind of what is the compensation going on out there, what's the average, because you don't want to find yourself in a situation where you're being offered a salary that you know is a lot less than maybe what the average is. I don't know what your advice to the students is if that's the situation. You know, how can they negotiate that?
Usually not.
Kind of thing.
Level.
So
it's usually set and there's no wiggle room. It's also something you don't bring up until you have the offer.
There you go. But again, knowing that, then you make the decision, you make the informed decision saying, I'm maybe making less here than I might be somewhere else, but the trade-offs may be I get to work on those big cases sooner, or I get to, you know, that kind of thing.
Well, and that's with the small firms, they may pop the trick question of what your salary expectations are. A lot of times they just don't know what they ask for going rates or whatever. So the more educated you can be, it certainly would help to lead off with, I understand that for firms in this market, what the typical salary would be, and then you have a basis for your discussion that's not just what you want.
Yeah, you go from there. You don't want to lowball yourself either if you're being asked, right? So,
and you want to find out the long term to whatever extent you can. The long term, because there's a lot that have different trajectories. You might start low and move up pretty quickly.
It seems to me that it's not maybe true for all of the firms, but there's even information about sort of the average time to make partner. So again, that could factor into what you're thinking. If it's a firm where you could be fairly fast moving, then maybe you take less. So as Beth says, the more information you have, the better position you are to make decisions and to do any negotiating if that's an option.
Your counselors can help you with whatever individual situation you're encountering, so make sure you use that resource.
Right. But come in with your papers and you sit down and say, here's what I found. Associate satisfaction rankings, again, another factor that could be very important for you. If you find a law firm where the associates are not terribly happy, then, but maybe it's the kind of work you want to do, or it's in the location. But again, I think that's information you take into CDO and you talk about it with somebody who's sort of, you know, that's their job. You might find a law firm that has high satisfaction ratings, but maybe they pay a little less. So all of these factors go into your making a decision. You're sitting down with the CDO team. You're informed. You've got something to talk about. and coming to a decision based on facts. Oh, I did want to mention while we're here, talking about this resource that has a lot of data, that's a big thing right now in the legal world is big data. It was described somewhere as the third wave of legal technology, and when I kind of looked at that, I thought the first wave of legal technology had to do with software related to billing, timekeeping, and docketing, and I'm going, really? 30 years? I mean, that's not much of a wave. We've had that for a long time. The second wave was supposedly digitization of our primary and secondary sources, our Lexis and Westlaw. Again, really not much of a wave there. We've had that for a while. So I'm not sure where they come up with this notion of this big data is the next wave or the third wave in legal technology. But it is going to be big. So this concept of being able to look at large data sets, figure out what they mean, understanding things like competitive intelligence, and the thing to be aware of right now is artificial intelligence. That's a big tool that's being touted right now for document review. So what I'm telling you is to kind of keep those things on your radar, of learning as much about those things as you can at this point in time. The prediction is the firms that are not doing more with big data, competitive intelligence, artificial intelligence, they're going to be left behind by the more nimble firms. So this might be where, you know, big firms can hire big IT departments. That doesn't necessarily mean that the attorneys are spending a lot of time with this big data. And that is predictably where the mistake is, that the attorneys themselves are kind of being shielded from the big data because of the big IT departments. So the smaller, more nimble firms might be more attracted to attorneys that are having some of these tech skills. So keep an eye on that concept of big data. And I mention this because a law librarian at a law firm that we are not allowed to say, who is someone we know, has recently been included on client pitches. You may or may not know that large law firms, typically, when, let's say, a corporation is looking for a new legal counsel, outside counsel, then law firms are invited to come in and make a pitch, a sales pitch, basically. And what is happening now is this librarian who has some skills in competitive intelligence and big data is being invited to go along to these client pitches. Kind of unheard of to do that, but she has that knowledge. There's no reason that a young associate couldn't have that knowledge as well and be invited to go along to those client pitches, which is a pretty big deal for a young associate to go to big corporations and make the pitch. So keep that in your brain. That might be something to look at. So the next database is the one from which the name comes. How do I change that? Leadership Library, but actually we got a message yesterday, just yesterday, that they have changed their name to Leadership Connect. And I did change that on that alphabetical list. It does now say Leadership Connect on that list. I just didn't change it here on this screen. So, back here on our careers screen, Leadership Connect right there is the database or the connection. And while the ALM kind of gave you some of those broad views and lots of surveys and statistics, the Leadership Connect became famous, and its strength are its directories. This is what they look like in print, and they still do produce print. I don't think we buy the print anymore because we have this tool and it's simply much more flexible and up to date. But as you can see, they were called the Yellow Book Library because they're yellow and red or blue. And they kept that color scheme. Let me get you a screenshot as well. So their real strength is that they are a directory with lots of detail in them. So sort of an annotated directory. This one is on the judiciary. And so an entry for a judge will tell you where they are the judge at this point in time or when this was published. But it will tell you where they went to school, jobs they had before they became a judge. Did they work for the government? Were they in the military? Are they members of particular associations? Did they clerk for someone else? So they give you a lot of that background biographical information. And those can be important when we're talking about sort of making connections with people. And, okay. Oh, I do want to point out while we're here, we do have that little box there that does have some material on specific topical material that we have. Environmental, elder, health. So if we have some resources on those fields, those areas of law, or if we are recommending some blogs you might follow, there, if you click through those, they go to a separate pages with those subject information. And leadership library is obviously down on the alphabetical list. Leadership Connect. Lots and lots of these directories across multiple industries. And that's a pretty long list, and it doesn't cover all of the things. So they cover, I mean, a wonderful amount of information. So you get current contact information when you're trying to literally find somebody, in addition to that background biographical information that you will see as well. What else do I have to say about this one? No. Okay.
Can I say something about the leadership libraries?
Yeah.
They're not the easiest things to use, but it's well worth poking around in there. You can find law grads and different things. If you want to do a JD Advantage sort of thing, the associations directory. Because, you know, we have bar associations, but then there's an association for everything. So you can go to an association page for what your interests are. If you're interested in judicial clerkships, you can find clerks and judges. Government is wonderful because there's a lot of places that it's kind of hard to find. Like if you want to be in a state or local government office, or even federal, but in a certain city, you can actually get to individuals very easily. If they have their contact information on there, it's public information. Now again, work with your counselor to craft your outreach, but it really is great as a foundation to just explore and gather information.
And I was mentioning that sort of the biographical thing as well. You know, maybe that's your entree, that, you know, members of the same association or same undergrad or something like that.
Undergrad is in there usually, so yeah, just lots of, it's huge. It's a vast amount of information, which means it's a little, sometimes a little overwhelming or difficult to navigate, but it's great.
Yes, but you can create your own account. I'll get to I think that's the next screen. So as Beth says, you know, again, maybe you've got your heart set on a particular location, or you just want to practice a particular area of law. You know, you want to kind of play on the UGA thing, but again, check with CDO on how you do that. The networks, I think this is a kind of interesting feature of this particular tool, that if you're doing some searching and you bring up a record for a particular individual, kind of comes up, you know, in a box, and their name is at the top, and just to the right of their name will be an icon, and I had to sort of make it big so it's a little fuzzy, but it literally is sort of a network. And you click on that, and it shows you their network through their schooling, through their associations. You may find you actually have a connection to someone, you know, that your uncle went to school with them, that kind of thing. But again, you know, how do you take advantage of those connections? It's very important to check the CDO on that. But you might be surprised at the connections that you have through this. And that is done with that little network icon that's right next to the person's name when you bring up a record for an individual. I kind of had to search for that one because they didn't seem to sort of tell you that it was there. So you just sort of click around and you find these kind of things as well. I didn't think that the help screens were particularly helpful, but they do have live support. And I know sometimes we're all a little about that, but please don't hesitate to take advantage of their live support, because it is not an easy database to use. Once you've kind of figured out how to use it, it's extremely powerful, and you can search on just an incredible number of factors and filters that you can go through as well. And I also do want to recommend Georgetown Law Library has some excellent tutorials on using these databases. So just Georgetown Law Library, go to their website, and I think there's even a link that says tutorials. So I think they've done a good job on using ALM. They had one on this database as well, so I'm going to give them credit for doing a good job with that. But don't hesitate to use the live support, because those people are just sort of sitting there. They're probably lonely and need someone to talk to. I know, it's just like, that's what I'm always thinking. They're just waiting for me to contact them as well. Oh, and I might also recommend the Leadership Connect to identify potential speakers. If you're part of a student organization and you're setting up a panel, or you're part of WIPI or Red Clay, I know sometimes speakers can be, kind of a little bit difficult to identify. So if you're looking for speakers, this might be a way to do that. Finding somebody in Atlanta who works in what you want to talk about for Red Clay or WIPI, this might be the way to do that. So keep that in mind if you have that on your plate to deal with. And this is kind of what the new screen looks like. As I said, they just changed their name yesterday. They still have the yellow and blue there. And up there in the corner, you probably can't see it, but it says, "Hi Sharon." So I have an account and I'm logged in. I suggest you create your own account so that when you do searches, you save them for yourself. What you need to do to set that up, though, is because the subscription databases don't always recognize our wireless stuff. What you need to do is the bank of computers out in the front of the library, when you enter, go here, set up your account there, because it will recognize those computers. And then once you've created your account, you're good to go. And that's probably good advice for almost anything where it gives you the option of creating your own account. Do it on those hardwired computers out there so it recognizes them, and then you can use them wirelessly, okay? So, once you've done that though, you get this screen, and they call their, sort of the personal stuff, like your toolbox. This becomes your leadership toolbox. And you've got things, my saved searches, formats, maybe you made some notes to yourself, things like that. So, my favorite org charts. I love organizational charts. I don't know why, just you. So lots of things that you can customize here as well. So again, thinking of this as your long-term project. And so the third database that I want to talk about is called Ravel Law. I'm not sure if it's Ravel. Some people say Ravel. Some people say Ravel. Do not know. Whatever you're happy with, I suppose. This is a fairly new service. The other two have been around in some form or other for a long time, in print, and then they've gone online. Ravel Law is a product, 2012, out of Stanford. Two young lawyers, here's the quote, two young lawyers realized data would change the world of practice. So going back to that data analysis and looking at those kinds of things as well. They do a lot with analytics. Firms, courts, and judges. Now, why that might be important in a job interview situation is maybe you want a clerk, so you're putting those applications in to clerk. And this can give you some judicial analysis. Now, what it analyzes, and keep this in mind for your a legal research problem, is that it will actually look at the opinions from particular judges, and it does include trial court judges as well, looks at their opinions and actually analyzes what kind of issues they tend to rule on and how. You can literally look at, does Judge Brown tend to favor the defendant in these kinds of cases? Or do they tend to favor the plaintiff in a different kinds of cases? I know I'm not being very specific, but you can kind of mush things around looking at how judges make the decisions that they make. If you have a case and you're just asking for a motion to suppress, you can go in here and you can find out that in 70% of the cases, Judge Brown will deny a motion to suppress if it involves underage minors. Or 20% of the time, if it involves that sort of thing, where you can literally see what their history has been based on the opinions that they've analyzed here in Revell. So really interesting stuff. I think it could be helpful from a research or an interview standpoint, again, to understand your judge. What kind of makes them tick? What kind of cases do they tend to go in different directions? That sort of thing. You may not bring it up in the interview. You might. Who knows? But it's nice to know what that person is about. And what kind of things they've done. And even looking at someone who has a long judicial career, maybe they've changed their philosophies, that sort of thing. So you've got that background information when you're talking to that person. And this is kind of a fun tool to find that out as well, but also useful from a legal research standpoint, analyzing cases and analyzing judges' decisions. You're going to appear before a particular judge. You want to know what's their track record on the kind of action that you're bringing to them. Does that make sense? So, very fun. So, in firms, courts, and judges as well. And this is also one that you can create your own account for as well. I do want to mention for the ALM, with that one, you don't even necessarily need to create your own account because you can log in with your Lexis account on that one. They're owned by the Sam Mega Corp. So, and I think it was up in the right. You click on that, there's a pull down where it said University of Georgia. There's a pull down there, and it gives you the option of logging in with your Lexis account. So that's probably the easiest way to do that one, so that your searches are your searches and not seeable by other people. Revell, create your own account. And this I just brought up an opinion by Judge Martin on the federal court, 11th Circuit. And she's one of the people who we have a portrait of her in the hallway. But it really breaks down cases a lot about even how specific paragraphs are cited. So a little bit different information that you get than you get from Lexis and Westlaw, the Key site and Shepard's that you get there, where they talk about cases and how they've been cited. This one breaks it down by paragraph. So really granular kinds of information as well. Okay. So those are the three databases. Hopefully, I'm presuming that you have not been exposed to them in your research classes. Two of them really aren't research databases. Revell, I think they might be talking about that in the advanced legal research class. I'm not sure about that, but it's a fascinating database to take a look at and look at the cases. But I mentioned that concept of you treating your search like a project, as a long-term project. And with any project, you need to have some mechanism to organize your work and what you're doing and what you're looking for. And so one of the popular ones with the legal world is actually Evernote. Evernote is a law practice tool. So any of you have Evernote accounts? A couple of you. Yeah, a few of you do. So it's good because it's very popular in the legal world. There are other ways of organizing anything, organizational tools. Maybe you're just one of those people that are happy just creating folders within your email account. That's fine, as long as you create a system that works for you to make sure that you keep all of your information together. And Evernote is particularly good at that kind of thing for a number of different reasons. One being things are stored in the cloud, so you have access to it from any of your devices, which is kind of handy. You also, I think that why Evernote is popular as well is that it kind of lets you capture almost everything that might be relevant to a job search. If you have a job search and you want to start with the initial job posting, and then you want to make sure that you save kind of everything after that. All of this research that you're doing in ALM or the Leadership Connect, you want to save that. You want to save your cover letter and the resume that you send, any email exchanges, all of that stuff that might relate to this job search with the, with the Smith-Jones law firm. And so Evernote lets you create little binders and keep all of that stuff together, no matter what format it may be in. One of the tools that they recommend using to help you save all of this stuff is called Clipper. It's an add-on that goes with Evernote. It's free as well. But it lets you, rather efficiently, you've got a screen that you're looking at from the Leadership Connect, and you can just clip it and immediately send it into your Evernote so that you kind of just do this as you're working through things as well. Let's see. Next, no, back here. On one screen. The other tool that they recommend using, the attorneys that think it's a great thing, is that Evernote gives you your own email when you set up an account. So those of you who have one know that. But using that email to send things into your binders as well. So you've kind of got clips that let you capture something here. You've got the email that might come in, and then you send it forward to the email, your Evernote email, to make sure that everything is brought together. Evernote has the tagging and keywords that you can put into things so you can find them later. I was reading some reviews. People really like the search feature within Evernote. So if you've got lots of stuff in there, it has a particularly robust search feature within the system as well. So I'm going to push Evernote right now for you to think about as a tool to manage your job search project as well. And also information about it being used actually out in practice and that sort of thing. So it's quite popular in the legal world as well. But find something that works for you. And if you find something, let the rest of us know that you found something that works for you. But right now, I'm going to recommend Evernote as a tool. If you haven't tried it, check it out. Take a look at the book. And we're right on time, so I'm going to wrap it up there. If you have any questions that we can briefly answer, I know that's a lot in 45 minutes. I realize that. So if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to email me and let me know, or ask Beth and she can pass on the question.
Can I get the PowerPoint you send out to everyone?
I can do that, yes.
You'll send it to me,
I will do
forward it
that.
on, so make sure you're,
And
didn't have your email on there. I mean, if you didn't sign up in advance, that's okay. Just make sure you sign up now so I don't know that you're here and want it.
okay, any questions? I know, it's a lot, you're tired.
Yeah, it's been a crazy week, hasn't it? One plug I want to put in while y'all are thinking of questions. We have a couple more sort of tech-related sessions coming up throughout the semester, not till March. So March 7th, India Page, who's our new pre-law advisor.
Your new UGA
She was a
pre-law
law
advisor.
librarian, but she's going to continue to do her annual presentation on social media, sort of the tricks and tools and do's and don'ts of that. And then on March 21st, Sharon Bradley will again present on organizing emails and some tricks for that. So I know you all
Because I
are
understand
experiencing that.
you young people don't use email. I mean, I just,
And unfortunately, whether you like email or not, it's going to be a very big part of your professional life.
Yes.
Until things change. Because right now that is the means of communication that you're going to find within any place where you work. And there's a lot of reasons for that as that platform stands now, I mean, especially with sending attachments and things like that. So, we all have that love-hate relationship with email, but it's there. It can be overwhelming. Most attorneys tell me they get upwards of 150, 200 emails a day. So, and that's relevant things that they need to read and address. It's not including spam. So just so you know, It's a very big dimension, and knowing how to handle and address and organize is important.
It's very sad.
I think you all are, you know, you come to law school very tech savvy, you're gonna know more about a lot of this than the people you go to work for. Just by virtue of having grown up where it's surrounding you and you're key to the changes. So have some confidence about it. It's not, you will probably not get overwhelmed as much as some of us older people have.
But spend some time looking at those analytics. Get familiar with looking at, you know, maybe if you majored in accounting, you might be comfortable with spreadsheets, but some of us are afraid of the spreadsheet. So get comfortable with that kind of information that you see that are surveys and analysis and numbers. You won't be an expert, but be comfortable with it because it is going to be a fact of your life in practice. And so you can't literally start shaking when they bring up the question of analytics, okay? Like I do with spreadsheets.